Sure, I'm glad I started my YouTube channel in time for WandaVision. I don't know where I would channel my excitement after watching an episode of the show. Because once again, episode 3, as the first 2 episodes did, but I think even more so, just absolutely blew me away. Like, in some ways it's even more exciting than just watching a full movie, because it's just like, oh wow, we're just getting a whole other snippet of the MCU just in these like 20-something minutes. So we're into color TV now. The show it is in the 70s, like I sort of thought last week, and the second episode was in the 60s. They weren't both in the 50s like I thought. I sort of missed out on that. I noticed some camera angles, but I didn't realize that they were actually sort of the whole different decade in the second episode. So in the third episode, it is in the 70s, and it's a very different show once again. So it's great. The intro, we get a different intro every time for each episode, it seems, that's sort of fitting that decade. And once again, this sort of 70s intro, it's just really cool how much the show evolves, and I'm so like thrilled every episode so far that I watched it. So of course the main focus of the episode ends up being the twins, and the whole sitcom premise this time is I think the most entertaining one yet. It's Wanda is realizing she's becoming pregnant at an extremely unnatural rate. Quickly they're trying to hide it from everyone because obviously this isn't normal and they want everyone to think that they're normal. She's pregnant, she starts to lose control of her powers, and all these like just wacky things start happening. She literally like just sort of she just like makes, somehow with her mind without meaning to, she makes like a stork appear, because I guess she has storks on her mind because storks bring babies like in Dumbo. And so she's just trying to cover up this stork. She's trying to cover up her pregnant belly and this stork as Geraldine's sort of walking around the house, and it's really like really pushing believability, but I mean in a way that it's supposed to, because it's a sitcom. And it's pretty funny. I love how weird the show is getting. Like the stork is it just made me laugh right away. I didn't catch this, but so I just thought, oh, maybe it was hints to what's actually going on, but really it's more metaphorical than that. The commercials that are in the middle of each episode, I think it is sort of pretty obvious now after I watched some other sort of theories and stuff and reviews. So the commercials in the first 2 episodes and this one are clearly all like they're all alluding to different sort of traumas of Wanda's past. So this is very much, I think there's a very good chance this is very much sort of happening to some extent in her head. So I think it's happening in her head, but it's also physically happening. It's clear that these commercials are basically metaphors for Wanda's past traumas. Now I've sort of realized I didn't get that from when I watched it the first time, but the first one is the Stark toaster, so that's supposed to symbolize the Stark rockets that killed her family and almost killed her and her brother Pietro. And then the second episode's one is sort of the Strucker. I thought maybe Strucker himself was involved then, as you'll see in my last video. I realized I was wrong and sort of corrected that no, he's actually dead. But so I think and that was sort of symbolizing when he was experimenting on her. So those are clear sort of past traumas. So I got that. So I went into this third episode being like, okay, I'm gonna be sort of aware of that this time, and then when the commercial comes on, I'm gonna clue in. And then I watch this commercial, and probably once I see other reviews, I'll be like, oh, how did I miss that? But so it was some sort of bath soap commercial, and again, we'll notice it is the same actors in all the commercials, though. I did notice that. So it's the same woman. I don't think the man was in this one, but the same woman from the first 2 commercials was in this one. But for the life of me, I don't know. Without like looking at anything, I don't really know exactly what this bath soap commercial is supposed to symbolize in Wanda's past. That one went past me. This one's the one with the most plot development of all the episodes so far. Obviously, the last one ends with her being pregnant, so now she's pregnant, and they're obviously excited but very confused about what's happening, and they make it very clear. Yes, so it's the doctor comes and he thinks she's been maybe a few months pregnant, and Vision's asking, oh well, I think how big would she be if she was only 12 hours pregnant? And the doctor just sort of laughs it off. Well, because that's actually how pregnant she is, only 12 hours. And so Vision and Wanda still don't really know what's going on, but there are hints sort of that this episode, once again, Vision is sort of cluing in, I think, to what's going on. So I think it's pretty clear now. It seems pretty clear to me that Wanda is in on it somehow, maybe at least subconsciously, because we know in the second episode the beekeeper comes out of like the manhole just in the middle of the street when she sees that, and I think she realizes that something's wrong, but she doesn't want she doesn't want to sort of break this illusion because she's with Vision, who is, I don't know if she like quite fully knows this, but he is dead. So she's happy to be back with her one true love, Vision. So she basically rewinds it at that point, which I talked about in my last review. But so, and then in this episode, something very similar happens. It's a little more subtle in a way, I guess. But it almost for a sec I thought, oh, did something happen with my TV? But no, it's basically Vision sort of starts to clue in about how sort of a lot of strange things are happening around them, but like how they've had a lot of close calls and everything. And Wanda, I think she realizes that he's cluing in, and I think she's responsible for what happens based on what happened last week. It just sort of clicks back, and then the scene starts over, and then it goes differently as Wanda wants it to. So I think it's pretty clear that Wanda is actually controlling things to some extent. I don't think she's the one behind it, obviously, but she's controlling things. And speaking of who's behind it now, I think it's safe to say now Sword is involved or behind this sort of thing, and we don't really know if they're sort of, last time we saw it, so Nick Fury was working with them, it seemed like, at the after credit scene of Spider-Man Far From Home, so you would think that they're not villains then if he's involved, but I don't know, it's not very clear yet. It seems like something kind of sinister is going on here, so I'm very curious as to see how they're involved. Geraldine is basically confirmed to be Monica Rambeau grown up. So that's Carol Danvers' best friend in Captain Marvel. I forget her name, but her daughter is Monica Rambeau, who we see as a child because Captain Marvel's set in the 90s. She's involved with Sword somehow. It seems almost like once you go into this sitcom world, however it is that you go through, I mean, it shows she comes out at the end, and it is sort of it is like a physical sort of like thing you go into, it looks like, as much as it seems like it's mental. Maybe I'm thinking it's sort of like a physical space that once you enter, what's there isn't really there, but you're mentally sort of, your brainwaves are affected in a way, and it sort of like projects, sort of makes you see what they want you to see. And I think even Wanda is sucked into it. After she has the babies, then we get to the really good stuff near the end of the episode, and this is where I think the show gets really brilliant. Because near the end of the episode, so it's maintaining the sort of sitcom vibe, suddenly the laugh track just sort of starts to vanish, and then suddenly the camera angles, like last week, but I think more extremely this week, they start to become different. You start having shots of Vision as he's talking to the neighbors, and they're sort of gossiping about Monica Rambeau or Geraldine and how she's kind of strange, and he's trying to sort of defend her, but then they start talking about how she doesn't have a home, and then he sort of starts to clue in something strange, and it starts almost like intercutting between that and the sort of Monica or Geraldine and Wanda's conversation inside, and sort of that sort of builds some tension, and that sort of automatically, you're not in a sitcom anymore once it starts sort of, the editing becomes like that, and there's a lot more close-ups, and the music's suddenly different, and there's more like things pulling in and out of focus. Once Wanda mentions to Geraldine that she actually is a twin, then you actually, in this part, you start to see Wanda, because I was saying last week how it seems like she's almost a completely different character than she was in 2015's Age of Ultron. But suddenly, in this scene, when things start to get serious, you see that old Wanda, that kind of more fierce, suddenly that starts to come through in spades in this episode, near the end. So as soon as Geraldine says, she sort of somehow knows, she doesn't know how she knows, but she says, oh yeah, your brother, he was killed by Ultron, right? And then Wanda is just, she's not happy that Geraldine knows. She's like, who are you? What's going on here? How do you know that? It gets really tense suddenly, and I almost think not only does her like fierceness kind of come back, but I think almost even the way she speaks, sort of her accent, her Sokovian accent sort of comes through just a bit. Not as much as it was in Age of Ultron, but maybe more where it was at sort of between Civil War and Infinity War. Even does sing sort of clearly like some kind of Sokovian lullaby right before that to her babies. It's sort of a sweet episode that Vision and her seem like they're finally getting their happy ending, but we know it's not going to last. And though there's a lot of comedy and the babies being delivered scene is really funny and stuff, but it ultimately ends on a pretty ominous note, as all these episodes have so far. But this one obviously reveals a bit more of what's going on, and Geraldine seemingly is thrown out, or Monica Rambeau, whatever you want to call her, she's thrown out of, once again, it seems like this dome. That's why it's clear to me that it's some sort of dome from that end scene, and she there's all these trucks and agents coming in, so it's yeah, it's pretty clear it's a physical space, like I said, and I think everyone going into it is sort of just suddenly sucked into, physically and mentally, into Wanda's fantasy, or whatever this being created. But it definitely seems to be influenced by Wanda. First 2 episodes, I know I was pretty high on them. They're probably like about 9.5s for me. This one's a 10, so this one's a 10. Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's my thoughts on this one. I can't wait to come back next week and talk about episode 4. And yeah, if you like this video, please leave a like. It really helps, and maybe share with your friends. And if you're enjoying the content, again, it would really help if you just subscribed. And yeah, then you won't have to search for it. So yeah, take care and bye.